Nxt In.
Welcome to Nxt In, our podcast on everything recruiting, technology, and today legal. As many of you guys know, we also operate a brand called Nxt Attorney. So we are really excited to be joined by Terry Sanks, who's the managing partner at Beusse Sanks, which is based out of Orlando, Florida. So Terry, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Yeah, of course. I guess where I like to start, as hopefully a lot of people that listen to this, that check this out, they look at the people we have on here tend to be thought leaders or leaders in the spaces we operate in. We're a recruiting agency, Next Level is, and Next Attorney focuses strictly in the legal space. So hopefully there's a lot of people who are looking at someone like you going, oh my gosh, how did he get there? Where is he at exactly? And what was his road to get there? So right now you're managing partner of an IP patent law firm in Orlando. So give us a little of your background.
Sure. Like I said, as an intellectual property law firm, we focus on helping businesses achieve a competitive advantage by protecting, enforcing, and securing their intangible assets. In this case, primarily, we're talking about patents, trademarks, and copyrights. How I got here, I'm a registered patent attorney, and to be a registered patent attorney, you have to have an undergrad degree in either a science or engineering background, or you have to have sufficient number of classes or courses to be able to sit for the patent bar. So, having both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in electrical engineering, I checked that box. So, after law school, I was hired by an IP firm and took the patent bar, and we started, me and my now late deceased great partner, we started this firm up about 3 years ago.
Okay, so you started your own firm 3 years ago, but you started a little bit before then. You kind of come from a military background, right?
That's true. I actually went to undergrad on an Air Force scholarship, and I spent 8 years in the Air Force. So during that time, I actually was using my engineering degree first as a program manager for a multi-million-dollar space experiment, one of a kind experiment that put eventually it will ended up putting 26 kilowatts of power in outer space, which
Is a lot, I assume.
at the time it was the most ever put in space on a satellite. I don't know if it still has the record. I suspect it still does, but yeah, that's a lot of power to put in outer space.
Okay, okay. Well, you're speaking. I'm like 26 kilowatts. Is that big? Is that small?
Yeah,
I don't know. Well, thank you for your service. That's awesome.
thank you.
Where were you stationed out of, or where did
First
you
at
do your
Edwards
Air
Air Force,
Force? Say that. Sorry.
Edwards Air Force Base out in California, and then I was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base, which is on the Panhandle of Florida.
Okay. So you never went to the cold weather places. That was smart. All right. Um, so what caused the career from? All right. So I'm in the military. I'm doing a lot of engineering, and now I'm a lawyer. So that's not necessarily a typical path of most of the attorneys that we either clients we have or people that are candidates that we work with. We don't see a lot with an engineering background. So why the engineering background and then shift into the legal space?
Well, I guess, well, one, in my area of practice, being a IP attorney, a patent attorney, most of us do have engineering backgrounds. Now, as for myself, my objective, my goal coming out of high school was to just go to undergrad, get a bachelor's degree in like political science, and go to law school. I had two parents who were both engineering, had engineering backgrounds. Um, my father was insisting I get an engineering degree. And I was like, absolutely not. I've had enough of math. I've had enough of this hard sciences in high school. I'm going this way because this is what I want to do. After we had that discussion, my mother came to me and said, you do know you can go to law school with any degree. And when she said that, I was like, okay, I'll go get the engineering degree. Um, the I guess the blessing with getting the engineering degree was, like I said, I ended up getting an Air Force scholarship. So I had an opportunity to use my engineering at some point, specifically while I was in the Air Force. And that's been applicable with me as an attorney.
So when you so you're a 19, 20-year-old kid or whatever, and you're like, hey, I want to be an attorney. Dad says go do engineering. In your head, when you wanted to be a quote unquote attorney or be a lawyer or go to law school, did you want to be a patent attorney, or do you believe a lot of the direction of specialization came from getting the engineering background, going, wow, this can be really applicable, and the patent law, route is pretty cool. I'm going to take my engineering brain, my math science brain, and put it into practice in the legal space?
Um, no, I had no idea about being a patent attorney. That was never on my mind. And actually, while I was in the Air Force, one of my sub duties was to review classified patents to determine if they should stay classified or if they could um, become publicly disclosed patents. Reading those patents were some of the most boring reading I have ever done. So when I went to law school, and like the placement center, the professors, when they saw what my background was, everyone was saying, well, you should be a patent attorney. And actually, I was trying to go every direction, but, well, I won't say every direction. I was really looking to go in something other than being a registered patent attorney. And in the end, the job found me. So while I was looking for a job, Jim Busey was had just moved to another firm. Part of his arrangement moving to that firm was he was going to hire in two new associates right out of law school, and I was one of the two he selected.
Okay, cool. So help me understand you today. You're in the legal space on the IP side, the hot new topic, because we work with a lot of technology companies and we work with a lot of legal
Right.
firms, and both of them are using, the buzzword that everyone's talking about, this artificial intelligence or AI or ML, or, which is a subsection of it. It's like you probably are hearing a lot of the AI conversation. I would assume you're using AI in what you're doing every day. And I'm guessing there is part of what you're doing that is securing people's AI, and different portions of what they're doing. So, how has AI changed what you're doing in the last, I don't know, maybe 2 years, 5 years, maybe?
AI truly hasn't, from what I do so far, hasn't made much of a change. Because there's a lot of rules that come into play with AI. For example, if an invention has been conceived or created, developed with AI, in other words, if AI can be identified as an inventor, you can't file for a patent on it. We've got a lot of tools out there now, like ChatGPT, Bard. The issue with those right now is if I was to try to use those to, say, draft a patent application, that arguably, who owns the output? Because that information is going back to OpenAI as well, or it's going back to Google. So we're kind of letting the cat out the bag. So for right now, there's a lot that's still being, I guess, hashed through is a good way to describe it. I've actually, at least in my office, have been staying away from using such tools, so any type of generative AI to help craft craft patent applications.
So, if someone comes to, do you use tools on the back end that will check an application to see if ChatGPT, well, I guess I don't know if it says ChatGPT, but if AI was used in drafting portions of it where it can kind of scan through it and go, hey, this is, pretty certain there's some AI involved in this.
No, because at this point, like I said, we're doing our own drafting. Now, I
Okay.
mean, there are tools out there that I use to make sure that I am not making some, I guess, technical, I won't say technical mistakes, grammar mistakes. There's certain terms or words we have to use in patent application. So I've been using those tools for about the last 10 years to, again, just provide a better work product.
Yeah.
So, for example, when we are doing a patent application, all the different parts of the invention, we've got to provide a number. And so if I am missing numbers, I've got tools that say, well, you're missing a number for this particular part. But that's again, that's something I've been using for over 10 years.
Yeah, I mean that's hardly that different than a spell check, right? And that's been since word processors, almost had spell check involved in it. Certainly Microsoft Word has had it for
Yes.
25 years, 30 years, whatever it is. So, where do you see this going? Because you're kind of in some ways at the tip of the spear. You're seeing it every day. You're probably having conversations or hearing from other attorneys. And like you said, you can't file a patent application that has AI involved because if you do, then really who owns it? Is it Open AI or Google, or is it your firm slash the inventor? So it's where do you see this going from a regulatory standpoint? Do you think this is something that Congress is going to come in and all of a sudden we're going to have this massive whole new constitution around what the computers are able to be a part of, or where do you see this going that's going to regulate it so that it will become very much a part of our, I mean, it's part of our everyday lives, but from a legal standpoint?
From a legal standpoint, I think at some point you are going to see Congress stepping in to do some type of regulation. The only issue right now is overregulating.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the other issue is even if they put laws in place, how are they going to be policed or enforced? I think that's what I see as really the biggest issue. And at the same time, all right, if we're doing it in the US, what's the rest of the world doing? I mean, right now, the two leading countries getting AI related or patents related to AI are the United States and China. So there's going to have to be more of an international effort to come up with what the rules and regulations are going to be. I mean, at least, for example, like from a patenting standpoint, right now, most countries are saying AI cannot be an inventor. Um, One country that currently has not said it when I last looked was South Africa. There was some talk that Saudi Arabia may allow AI to be an inventor, but most every other country is still maintaining it's got to be a human that's an inventor.
Maybe what we should do is ask ChatGPT what regulations we should have on ChatGPT, right?
And I'm
Do
sure
you have
we'll
you
get an answer.
Yeah, we will get an answer, and maybe not like it so much. Uh, have you had any really interesting cases come about that you've either seen yourself personally or heard about that are very much this like I'll give you an example. This came up maybe, let me see, my kids are 15 to 9 years old, so maybe it was about 10, 12 years ago. I was getting my will drafted up, and my attorney started to put in there things of digital assets. And he said this
Yep.
was, this maybe it was 15 years ago. And he said, hey, this interesting for him. It was a family friend. And he said, this is really interesting for me because this is not regulated. The idea of like, do you own your Facebook account or do they if you pass away? Or do you have to put that in your will that you will your Facebook account and password down to your child? So that was a very like tip of the spear, very new, that
Yes.
was digital. It wasn't necessarily AI, but it was that whole new digital assets versus your typical will in 1980 was your physical assets, your car, your house, your diamonds and jewels. Now all of a sudden they had to think about digital assets. So he was seeing that. Are you seeing things every day that are popping up that are really kind of, I don't want to call it controversial, but like right now controversial because there isn't regulation as to can ChatGPT help you write something versus not? It's very much a gray area when it comes to AI in patenting something.
Well, in addition to doing, like I said, patents and trademarks, I also do intellectual property or IP litigation. So earlier this summer, an issue that had come up was attorneys using Chat GPT or some form of AI to help them write briefs. Um, the downside to that has been AI has been making up cases and saying these here's a case, it says this, and there's no such case. And so that has been it kind of percolated up this summer. So some courts, I'm in a case right now in Texas, for example, where we had to sign off on a statement for the judge stating that if we're using any type of AI tool, we are fact checking any position that the AI is taken to make sure that it's actually correct law.
So you're telling me there is stuff on the internet that is not true? I don't believe it.
Imagine that.
Imagine that, right? So, and again, that's we've been saying it now ever since really the dawn of the internet is that you can't believe everything you see on the internet or hear on YouTube or whatever. And I'm working through teaching my kids that because they tell me they saw something where they make $1 million if they do something.
Yep,
I'm like, guys, just but that's where in many cases that's where OpenAI and Google, that's where the AI is getting its information. So if the information it is gathering is
true.
incorrect, it's going to spit back out incorrect information. So that is pretty interesting, the idea that like, hey, this case never existed. It may have in some random writing that is not real, but that was a sample writing and it was a fake writing, but it grabbed it as if it was real. And that's
Exactly.
interesting. So um, from the transition here, we again we work with um, attorneys, law firms. We assist them and support them in bringing on new lawyers, associates, partners, paralegals, admins, etc. You're a managing partner, so you sit down, you interview, you look to bring on new attorneys. You've probably been in dozens, hundreds of whatever it is of interviews for different attorneys. What do you see when you if you could give advice to the people who are listening who are like, hey, I want to move up, I want to get into patent law, I'd love to work at a place like Beusse Sanks where they're at the tip of the spear of this really cool the AI space. And then you interview them and you see a lot of them make the same mistakes, whether it was in their past or in the interview process. What advice would you give for the person who's maybe Terry, since you're a very young guy, Terry 5 years ago before you really were getting going, but Terry 10 years ago, whatever. What advice would you have for those folks?
The advice I would have is really, and it's again, it's not just doing IP. It's whatever area. Um, learn the business. And when I say learn the business, learn the law. Um, but in addition to learning the law, you have to understand you need to be flexible with what's coming, with um, how things might be changing. I mean, IP law has changed so much over the time I've been an attorney. And you can't just be fixated on, well, this is what I've learned. You've got to be flexible. You need to stay current on what's going on with technology. I see a lot of people who aren't doing that per se. I mean, I'll watch shows, I will read journals to at least see what's coming down the pike with technology in general.
Okay. So what shows are you watching? Any good shows?
Uh, I mix it up. One thing I started watching, there's a show on the History Channel. Oh, what's it called? I'm on the second. It's the second iteration of it. The first one focused on like some of the top um, titans of industry back in the
Ah,
1800s. Vanderbilt.
yeah, like
And they went
Rockefeller and
to
yep.
yeah Rockefeller, and it was interesting watching it because actually IP patents was discussed in there. I mean, you look at I think in the second phase of it, I mean Tesla was brought in, and you saw how Tesla and GE tussled and stuff like that. It was interesting from that standpoint for me.
Yeah, well, or you could watch Billions or Suits, right? I like yours better. It's a
Well,
little more historical.
Actually, I'm just finishing up Suits.
There we go. There we go. That's the reality. You're like, what's the name of it? What it talks about Titans of India. It's called Suits. Yep. Yeah.
Titans, I haven't gotten back to, but Suits. Honestly, started watching Suits. I didn't like Suits initially because if you watched all the Suits, they do bring in IP. You've got episode 2. They're talking about telling Mike go write a patent. Now Mike has no experience, can't really write a patent. I mean, he doesn't have a technical background. I mean, well, you know, Mike has no background, but the way they did it, and it wasn't as much that as from the standpoint they wrote it in a day, they filed it in a day, they got it rejected the next day. I mean, patents take no patent goes through that fast.
All right. So Terry officially says Suits not real. Not real. It's not reality. This is not reality TV. I get it. Yep. Yeah, right. Patents take 2 years to go through all the process, and all of a sudden they're making a rejection in a day. Sure. Sure they are. Yeah. So again, so as you're recruiting, how do you find someone? Because we hear this from a lot of different clients and so on. They want to find their background is in what they're looking for. However, one of the most important things is that they will be willing to change. So you said, I want someone who's going to learn because everything we're doing is ever changing. So I can't look at what they did necessarily 2 years ago because that might not be relevant in 2 to 3 years. How can you find someone that is flexible, that adjusts, that loves to learn? Do you have questions you ask in an interview process, or do you have something you see in their background that says this person is going to adjust with the times as it is ever changing?
There's really, I think it depends on the position I'm looking for. Like, let's say if I'm looking for another patent attorney, then it depends on if I'm looking for someone with a lot of experience or still fairly new. So if it's someone who's fairly new, say out of law school in the first less than, I say, 3 years,
Hmm.
I am looking at their law school background to see what they've done as well. In other words, if their resume says, look, I went to undergrad, finished that, and then I went to law school, finished that. I didn't do any extracurricular activities. I really was just a full time student. Those resumes don't interest me as much as someone who may have worked, someone who, while they're in law school, participated on, say, law review or did moot court or mock trial. Because I know someone who's doing other activities like those, they are learning to pivot, make changes based off of things that are, I mean, it's not just I'm going to school, I'm just doing the classwork. They are dealing with other activities where they have to pivot and be flexible. For
Yeah,
more
and I think in a
experienced
lot of,
attorney,
I'm sorry, go on,
oh, go
keep
ahead.
going. No,
Go
no, keep
ahead.
going. Yeah, well,
All
I
right.
think
So
what
again,
that should, we must have a little delay. I was saying when you have someone like that and they're in school, what they're showing by being in mock trial and so on is when they have some free time or when they make free time, they apply that free time to legal type stuff because they're interested, they're intrigued by it, and they do. They want to learn and learn more and
yes,
not just I go to school, I'm going to be a lawyer and then I get my job, but they want their brain always turned on whether it's in the classroom or when they leave the classroom. So now
that's true.
experienced attorneys.
Experienced attorneys, now I'm not as much looking at the law school aspect of it, but I am looking at where they've worked from before. I mean, again, if I'm looking for a patent attorney, I want to see that they've had experience writing applications before. I might want to even see sample work product to see, again, their process. I can't, I mean, if they say, well, here's a patent that I prepared, I can go on the PTO website and then look at what's called the file wrapper, which is the whole history of the patent, and I can see how it was worked, um, to see how what their thought process was, just, and that's largely what I'm looking for to see how they went about it. Did they respond to rejections from the patent office where maybe it wasn't fully thought out, or did they respond to a point where they may have missed an issue where the examiner had to bring that issue back in another response? Just again, seeing how thorough they are.
Got it. So as we wrap up, again, we have Terry Sanks, he's managing partner at Beusse Sanks out of Orlando. Are you currently looking to bring on people? Is that something that you're like, yeah, these are the types of people we want as we continue to grow as a firm, as we're bringing on new clients?
Yeah, I'm always looking. I'm always trying to expand. Right now, I am looking for a litigation attorney, someone ideally who can hit the ground running. I've got some I consider kind of exciting litigation going on right now. Um, I'm also looking for a I've designated it just an IP attorney, but it's probably shaping up more to be another patent attorney. Um,
Okay.
Again, it's one of our we have two logos here at the firm. One of them is from beneath the seas to outer space, providing IP solutions. The reason we use that is because we are filing patents and trademarks for technology that is ranges everywhere from that's going beneath the seas, that's actually up in outer space, where all our technology is actually in use. So I mean, I've got stuff flying in outer space right now that I've either patented or trademarked. Same thing with technology that's being used underwater and everything between underwater to outer space.
That's awesome. And that's cool. I imagine there is a sense of pride you have when knowing like, hey, something just got launched into outer space that is going to either maybe it's figuring out barometric pressure in in a different part of our atmosphere, or it is allowing us to travel to parts of the sea that we've never seen, and or maybe we've seen but rarely, and you're part of that, making sure that that patent exists so that that company
Yeah.
can do things that we haven't explored, been to places we haven't explored, or understood things that we haven't understood before. That's really cool. Well, again, if someone is into the IP patent space, they're an attorney or done litigation, how can they reach out to you, Terry?
The easiest way to reach out to me is we have an email address just for receiving resumes, employment at firstinIPlaw.com.
Okay.
Or you could email me directly, which is tsanks at firstinIPlaw.com.
Okay. So again, if you're listening and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this seems really cool. I love what, we're in some exciting litigation and we got some cool stuff going on. Terry seems like a great person. I'd love to get to chat with him about what openings they have and so on." Again, Terry, I'll have you repeat it just so everyone hears it. How can they reach out to you?
Employment at firstinIPlaw.com or tsanks at firstinIPlaw.com.
Excellent. Well, Terry, I thank you so much for joining us today. This is a ton of fun. Um, I'm sure you can't tell us what patents you're involved in currently today, writing and so on, but hopefully you'll join us in a year and tell us. Well, actually, you'll find out tomorrow, right? According to suits, you find out tomorrow if the patent
Yeah,
goes through
I
or
find
not.
out tomorrow if it got
Yeah.
approved or not.
But you'll have to let us know in about a year some of the cool stuff you were working on today that eventually is either beneath the sea or up in space. So thank you again, Terry, for joining us. Thank you, everyone
Thank
else.
you.
Like, subscribe to this, comment, and if you're interested or intrigued, reach out to Terry again about some of the openings that they have as they're working on growing their awesome IP firm down in Orlando.
Nxt In.